Hello, everybody. Neil Hiscox with Canadian Auto Dealer. Today, we're introducing a new segment that's going to be an ongoing series in our video interviews called Tech Talk. And the goal with Tech Talk is to start to provide a little bit of background on some of the terminologies, the forces, the directions that are driving all of these different things impacting our industry. We hear an awful lot of different terms used in different discussions, things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and often without context or definition or enough of an understanding of what these things are to really be able to apply them to our own thinking. And so with that in mind, Canadian Auto Dealer is launching this new series, Tech Talk. And with it, we're going to be bringing a range of different experts, automotive and outside automotive, who are going to help put a little bit of meat on the bones of some of these different forces at work. So I'm very pleased to kick that off today. Our first guest is Jeffrey Hunter, who is Director of Data Science with Uberflip. And I'll let Jeffrey tell us a little bit more about that. I also have Barry Hillier here from Catalytic Technologies. Tech Talk is sponsored by Catalytic. Catalytic Technologies is a new company that is working as a technology accelerator and brokering almost relationships between important startups and new technologies that have a chance to influence automotive with the industry itself. And certainly I'll let Barry touch a little bit on that. Gentlemen, I look forward to this first conversation. I'm very pleased to have you both here. So Jeffrey, first give us a little bit of an introduction on yourself.
So I'm classically trained as a data scientist. I have my PhD in applied math and have done some work in the healthcare sector, did a lot of consulting work at big places like Deloitte and smaller places as well. My passion is really just following the data, and regardless of the industry that it's in. So I love understanding about different kinds of industries and different lines of businesses and how teams work together. Currently I work at a place called Uberflip, and Uberflip is a marketing technology company that is creating a platform to allow marketers to create engaging destinations that drive pipeline.
Interesting. Barry, Catalytic Technologies, you're a familiar face to the automotive industry. So where Jeffrey is very deep in tech, looking into the automotive industry for the purpose of this conversation, you're very deep in automotive, but looking to create a bridge for tech.
No, that's exactly it. Just in all the time that I've been involved in automotive, technology's played an evolving and constantly changing role, but that role has more often than not been misunderstood or underutilized. So Catalytic is really all about trying to not just educate, but to, your words exactly, bridge that gap so that dealers and dealerships and the automotive industry in general can have a much better understanding that's based in fact and reality, but with use case studies. And when I met Jeff, what I loved about Jeffrey was he wasn't just a tech guy that literally talked tech. He talked about strategies. He put it in context. And I think context is so important because these new technologies are critically important, but if you don't understand them, it's impossible for us to expect that our dealers, the industry in general, is going to be able to utilize them.
I think that is a great segue to where I'd really like to start today. In order to create context, one has to have common understanding. We do hear terms thrown around an awful lot: machine learning, AI, some of these different things. Jeffrey, give us a foundation to start from. What are the things we really need to understand to even start down a path to figuring out how my business is going to be impacted? Back us all the way up to say, here are some of the key forces at work, here's what they're called, and here's why I think they matter to you.
Sure, sounds good. I think I'll kind of start with the why before getting into some of the technical terms, like why data science exists, in my view. I think is to really empower businesses with decisions and insights that they perhaps are very complex or very hard to understand just by looking at data initially. And so, like, for me, data science teams exist to empower people to make decisions and make them efficiently that they had before. And so, in order to do that, there's kind of a, well, I guess a more popular kinds of set of tools and technologies and methods. Initially, it was just called machine learning, which machine learning is just kind of like large-scale pattern recognition. So in a sea of videos, how do you know which ones are cats versus dogs versus something else? And a lot of those machine learning algorithms work by doing pattern recognition across various things. With kind of a related technology is called operations research, which is more about kind of path optimization. The best example is your car navigation system. How do you get from point A to point B while mitigating all the traffic and accidents and, you know, red lights, et cetera, time of day, all that kind of stuff. And then more at a higher level, all this these technologies kind of work towards what's being called as artificial intelligence, which is at a very high level kind of using automating human decision making. And of course, how we do that is with machine learning, with operations research, and a couple of other things as well. And then another term that's also discussed quite a lot is deep learning. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning. I would informally call it a really hard branch of machine learning. But it shows a lot of, but deep learning has been the reason why we are now talking about self-driving cars and seeing them on the road, that it lends a whole new level of sophistication that previously was not really possible with the simpler methods.
One of the things that that seems to me is, on the one hand, we hear a lot and read a lot about the potential of autonomous vehicles and this mobility infrastructure that is leaps ahead of where we are today. At the same time, in a day-to-day, we still live in a world where we have very siloed data. We have a hard time making systems talk to each other, and the degree to which systems talk to each other has an awful lot to do with what the vendors allow. Help me bridge that gap a little bit, both in terms of the persistence of that gap and what we might see changing over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. I guess key to any kind of, you know, the workflow of a data scientist is to be able to tap into one and often multiple different data sets, and at the very least join them together and see what kind of new insights we can get. And a good example is, you know, joining our Salesforce data with our, you know, web and mobile analytics data. Say, hey, this current customer of ours is exploring the website, and hey, did you know they're also checking out these other things? They might be interested in, you know, buying something new or upgrading or things like that. And so there's a lot of really unique insights that can be derived with just joining these large data sets together. And as simple as that sounds, it's actually quite complicated to do, because there's a lot of technology, both legacy and newer methods. How do we integrate all these systems together? How do we have an understanding of what's in the database? How do we get permission, regulatory things, and whatever else to do all this kinds of stuff? And so it can be quite challenging from a technical and from a, I guess what I'll call administrative or legal kind of perspective as well. But I think that's one of the unique opportunities, is that because there's been so many challenges around that, that, hey, you know, some companies, as they move forward, they're thinking with a data first mentality. And I think that's one of the kind of key cultural shifts that's happening across all businesses today, automotive and elsewhere. It's just that people are, as they about doing things are saying, well, I'm over the course of me doing my function, I'm going to be essentially generating a bunch of data. How can I easily share that data with someone else? And how can we join our insights together? And whether it's a simple thing like, hey, you can have access to my database, or something more technically rigorous like, hey, I'll create an API for you to be able to call and pull data from my systems. I think that's one of the unique things that we're seeing across all industries. Yeah.
Jeffrey, does that pose any issues with privacy issues, some consumer worries? I know dealers often talk about some of the concerns that they have, but what are your thoughts on how you can mitigate that when you're starting to bridge all of these systems together?
I think privacy is one of the most critical foundational things. When I hire someone, the first thing that I have them do is read our privacy policy and understand our privacy practices. And I'm like immovable on that. And so I think privacy is the foundation of how in spirit we should be responsible about rolling these things out. And so within that big umbrella of privacy, there are some legal frameworks like GDPR and the Canadian privacy policies and HIPAA and other things like that that govern kind of some more granular specifics around the right as a customer. Can I have a right to my data? What kind of information do you have on me? How are you using it? The explainability of things. But also it impacts on a much more technical level the data science teams and how they roll out solutions, that they want to make sure that if we approach problems with a very product mindset, that we can bring the user as part of that journey and build an intelligence that they are comfortable with. I think we're all okay with, for example, car navigation systems of like Google Maps. We trust that. But if that solution was just imposed on people and their paper maps ripped away, then there wouldn't be as much trust around that solution. So I think privacy and product adoption kind of go hand in hand, in addition to the regulatory frameworks that kind of govern the more specifics around what kind of information can and can't be shared.
One of the things that's been a real issue and point of discussion, certainly in the automotive industry and from the standpoint of a retailer, is data ownership. Who owns the data? So who gets to make decisions about how it's accessed? And I think that's probably going to continue to be a challenge. What are some of your thoughts in terms of what you see in different sectors and different types of industries and areas over how data ownership is overcome as a roadblock?
Yeah, I think one of the groundbreaking legal frameworks that came into place regarding that is GDPR. And it primarily in the EU, but basically it governs a lot of general practices around who owns the data and the right for someone to see their data and how quickly someone has to turn around and say, okay, here's the data. It's an easily consumable format as opposed to distributed all over the place, that kind of stuff. So that was very groundbreaking in the sense that, because not only did it affect the EU, but also every global company, which is a lot, is impacted by that. Even at Uberflip, we are impacted by GDPR because there are going to be visitors that visit websites and they're in the EU. So we have to be GDPR compliant right off the bat. And so an understanding of not only GDPR, but other privacy policies is really important. In addition to, once you're familiar with them, there's an understanding of how do we solution that? Can we natively build privacy into the product so that we never have to worry about it? So that's never a human administrative thing, that it's an automatic, you opt in or opt out, or you click a button, say, hey, provide me my data. And when you go in, for example, to like Facebook and Google, there are options there where you can dig around and say, okay, please provide me all the data that you have on me. And you literally click a button, and then you might have to wait 24 hours or something. But that level of convenience is necessary because of things like GDPR. And I think a lot of the worries and opportunities around all the regulatory and privacy things can be mitigated with a privacy first responsibility to how we roll solutions out, so that we never have to worry too much about it, but still we have to be mindful of it.
I'd like to touch on, and I'm going to throw this one to you, Barry, a phrase you used, a data first mentality. One of the things, use a simple example, you know, Fitbit has got us all trained that we're supposed to be doing 10,000 steps a day. And you know, there's lots, we could talk about how one changes mindset and habit. Barry, you've been selling technology into the automotive industry for a long time and in a number of different capacities. Barry, you first, but then Jeffrey, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts too. How does one create a data first mentality to be placing the priority and the level of thought on this stuff that one should?
It's a really good question, because I think historically the industry hasn't had a data first mentality. I've been involved in a lot of projects over the years with manufacturers and dealers just trying to clean up the data. And it's been an afterthought. And a lot of it has been because you've had a patchwork of multiple systems. The way that the databases have been set up has been very different. So you can't structure all the data in a way that ideally you would like, especially if you want to get insights with it. And the other aspect, I think, to this really relates down to two things. One is having a sense of just education and understanding of what are the implications to the business, to customers. And then the other aspect is the training to be able to utilize your entire workforce so that you can simply engage in being able to take more and more data in, but to do it in a way that isn't going to cause you multiple problems down the road. And that's where I think individuals like Jeffrey really come in, because I have to believe that this isn't just the automotive industry that has this issue.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think I'll add on to that. Those are great points, Barry. I think one of the devices I use to kind of facilitate a data first understanding is asking business leaders, what kinds of decisions and questions do you have over the course of your day? Not necessarily think about what data do you need, but just, you know, what information, what decisions are you tasked with on a day-to-day operation? And wouldn't it be nice if, you know, for example, someone just walked into your store and you knew exactly what they wanted to buy or what they're interested in? I don't think we'll ever get to that level of intimate understanding, at least in the short term. But at least kind of understanding a little bit of that kind of futuristic understanding of things. And so I think by focusing on, you know, the business questions that motivate things, I think that that an understanding can be created, like, hey, if we had information about who our customers are before they even entered, wow, that would make my job, you know, easier, you know, faster, better, more efficient kind of thing. So I think one of the devices that I use is, you know, focusing on the business questions and then looking putting my technical hat on, looking at all those different data sources that we can marry together to surface those insights to the business users. And I wish I could show you, like, you know, record some of the previous conversations I've had over the course of my, you know, profession and stuff. But when someone can just, you know, tap into, I just want to search for who are my customers, what are they interested in, et cetera, like a single portal of information, of insights like that, they go, oh my God, I didn't know this could be possible right now today. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can. And so that's the impact of a data first kind of organization moving forward.
So imagine there's some risk that we've gotten so used to not being able to do some things up until yesterday, it doesn't occur to us we might be able to tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I think that's one of the unique values of a data science team, is that we think about problems differently, both in terms of the scale of the problems. Like, we like to answer hundreds of questions in an afternoon. And so we think in that kind of scale, and we operate the data in that kind of scale. And so when we hear about other problems that people have, we always kind of view their how to solution that problem through a very different lens than what was traditionally done. And quite often over the course of my work, it involves bridging a bunch of these teams together, the data science team with the core data capability, but understanding that a variety of different teams have different resources and capabilities that we can tap into, and to really, bring data and information together to help everyone out.
Jeff, when you approach that first, traditionally, what have been the big barriers that you've seen, just generally speaking, and how do you go about the process of overcoming those barriers?
There are many barriers, from traditional, where's the data, to getting data access, to technology barriers of I don't have an operational database to be able to merge all this data together, to people challenges. And I think one of the biggest thing is that it's I tend to, when I diagnose situations, I always kind of view it through kind of 5 pillars: one, strategy, people, process, data, and technology. And you really need to have a strong foundation in all 5 of those pillars to be able to move forward with a reasonable agility on any kind of data science initiative. And so, in the absence of strategy, you're building without any, final endpoint, without a purpose, without the people to do it, then obviously there's no one to do it. Without the data, well, there goes the absence of any kind of decisions around things. So I think the unique thing is that every organization is different in where they are on those 5 foundations. And as someone, if I were to just walk into a place starting fresh and new, the first thing I want to do is more of an assessment to see, well, how strong is the strategy, how strong is the data, et cetera, et cetera. And then depending on the resources that I have and my own capabilities, and depending on what kind of size of the team I have, we just kind of play it by ear and take it from there. And I think over the course of everything, there's always knowing, as a practitioner in the industry, is knowing when to go rogue, in the sense of I'm going to hack something together and do stuff I'm not supposed to do, not from a violating privacy principles, but maybe someone says you're not allowed to access this data, but I'm like, hey, actually I can, but through a different system. So I'll pull that data in, I'll merge it with a bunch of stuff, I'll do some insights around this, and then I'll show it to people, and then they'll go, oh my God, this is the most useful, important thing. And so sometimes it's knowing when to break the rules a little bit and go rogue, because those are the times where I only do that when I'm relatively certain that, oh yes, the value proposition around what I'm trying to do will be really, really crystal clear at the end of doing this. And so it's a challenging question. Everyone's different, everyone's unique, but really everything, a solid foundation with a strategy, people, process, data, and technology is necessary to kind of see this thing forward.
I want to start to wrap this up, but I'd like to, a couple of questions I've got. One thing that certainly automotive retailers have been doing for ages is looking outside the industry at some best examples, best practices in retail. So we often hear about how Apple has changed the retail model as an example in terms of in-store behavior. Give us, if you guys could both point me towards, or point our listeners to, some examples where you say, hey, if you really want to look at some great examples of be it an industry or a company where you can fairly easily glean some lessons in terms of how data science is impacting businesses today, where would you point people?
I would say the biggest thing for me is really just personalization, and the importance of personalization. I think when everyone balance personalization, like people don't want to be like all creepy that we know everything you did in the last 5 minutes or whatever, we know everything about you. But from if I'm a customer walking into a store and I have a genuine buying interest, then yeah, it's kind of nice that someone listens to me, listens to my needs, listens to my wants, and is able to kind of find a right fit. for what I have. And I think a large part of and in my at Uberflip, personalization is key to everything. Delivering a very resonant message to your audience to generate new leads and have a higher win rate, et cetera, et cetera. All that is really important. I think that's one of the biggest things. Even if you look at Google, if I'm searching for cat videos, I better find cat videos. Hey, I was looking for X and you gave me Y. That's stupid. Stop doing that. My interests are cat videos. And I think data science is uniquely positioned to surface those insights for people, because we work across different databases, different technologies, different systems, and we bring all this stuff together, and we can answer very unique questions in doing so.
Barry, where do you look for inspiration?
I hate to say this, but I look outside of the automotive industry, which is kind of what started a lot of this, because I think other industries have really adapted, and they're looking very much at how technology can be something that operates as a positive force for their business and for their industries. When we were talking earlier, Jeffrey had forwarded to me some interesting McKinsey articles, and one of them was currently in automotive industry. There are about 500 companies currently working on data and machine learning and AI related technologies for the automotive industry. 97% of them are being funded outside by non-automotive investors. And so what that tells me is there's a huge opportunity for the industry in this area, and they're just not taking advantage of it. So I think hopefully the inspiration of what other people are seeing can be something that can become shared and equally inspiring by the people that, for instance, are watching this video, because I'm highly excited about the next 10 years. And I think that the inspiration is coming because I'm seeing how so many of these technologies have rapidly evolved in the last 5 years. And there is a long tail curve often in a lot of these technologies, but so much has happened recently, and so much is going to start to become part of our day-to-day lives, as it already has right now. So it's going to be an interesting journey, I think, for everybody that's part of a dealership or an automotive manufacturer. And I really hope that they take part in that journey.
I think that's a great way to finish it up for now. Thank you both very much for the first of what I think will be an interesting series of discussions, trying to be a bit tech first and not just data first. But I thank you very much, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Okay, this is Neil Hiscox signing off for Canadian Auto Dealer. We will see you all soon.